Me 16 years old, sophomore in high school. It's 2012, and life is full of awkward moments and confusing situations. I'm a full-blown weeboo, a term that back then, we were like a badge of honor. My best friend Alex was just like me, shy, socially awkward, and obsessed with all things anime. We'd known each other since we were 5, and in a world that didn't always understand us, at least we had each other. Every weekend, Alex would come over to my house. We'd spend hours playing video games, watching anime, and doing the usual nerdy things. Girls, they were a mystery. We'd talk about anime girls all day, but the real ones, too awkward to approach. One day, in the middle of a computer lab session, Alex leaned over to me with a grin on his face. "Yo, check out all this rare stuff I got from a guy in a Discord server," he whispered. Curious, I peeked over at his screen. It was all typical weeb stuff. Characters, art, games. But then, he clicked open a folder labeled Premium Content. At first, it seemed harmless enough. Just some fan art and edgy memes, the kind you'd expect from our corners of the internet. But then I realized it wasn't just normal fan content. Some of it was disturbing, even by internet standards. Nothing explicit, but you could tell something was off. The girls in the art weren't just cute. They were unnaturally perfect, drawn with exaggerated proportions, set in odd poses. My stomach twisted. Before I could say anything, I heard footsteps approaching. Miss Peterson, the teacher, was walking behind us. My heart skipped a beat. "Too late. What are you two looking at?" she asked. Her voice was sharp. Suddenly, the entire class turned around. Eyes on us. Mortification. Complete silence. We were immediately sent to the principal's office. Our parents were called. My dad came to pick me up, and the drive home was suffocating in its silence. Alex's parents were close to mine, so they ended up talking too. Finally, my dad spoke up. "I talked to Mr. Walker." He said, "You boys have two options. You could be grounded for a month with no internet, no games. Or you can come hunting with me this weekend. It's your choice, but you're both getting the same punishment." Alex and I texted each other. The decision wasn't hard. Neither of us wanted to be grounded. At least hunting sounded like an adventure, even if neither of us had ever been hunting before. My dad had always tried to get me to go, but I'd always said no. Guess this time, he was going to force my hand. That Friday after school, my dad picked us both up in his truck. It was a 4-hour drive to his hunting cabin in northern Michigan, deep into the woods, where there was no cell service, no towns for miles. The cabin was small and rustic, filled with the smell of pine and old cigarettes. Dad seemed unusually excited, happier than I had seen him in a long time. "This will make men out of you boys," he said, grinning. I rolled my eyes. We unpacked our gear. Rifles, hunting knives, camouflage clothes, bright orange vests. Then, Dad launched into his endless safety lecture. It lasted forever. "Never point a gun unless you intend to shoot," he said. "Always identify your target, and stay within sight of each other." Normal dad stuff, I guess, but I felt a little nervous. The woods were unfamiliar. I wasn't sure what to expect. That night, we ate canned stew for dinner and went to bed early. We had to wake up at 4 a.m. The woods make strange noises at night. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. Alex snored above me on the bunk. Finally, around midnight, I managed to drift off. Waking up at 4 a.m. was brutal, but Dad was already up and dressed, making coffee and oatmeal. "Eat up, boys," he said. "We need energy for the day." We dressed in all the hunting gear. I felt ridiculous in camo, but Dad double-checked our rifles one last time. He showed us how to use them properly again. "Remember," he said, "we're hunting deer, nothing else." We hiked into the woods while it was still dark. The cold air hit me, and I could see my breath, dew soaked through my boots, making everything feel heavier. We walked for about 45 minutes before Dad set up a hunting blind in a small clearing. "This is the boring part," he said. "Sit quiet and wait." The sun began to rise around 6 a.m. The woods slowly became visible, but nothing was happening. Alex kept fidgeting. and Dad kept giving him stern looks. By 8 a.m., still nothing. "Let's move on to another spot," Dad whispered. We packed up our gear and continued deeper into the woods. The trees grew thicker and less light came through. The birds had stopped singing, which struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Suddenly, Dad stopped in his tracks. He put his finger to his lips, signaling for us to be quiet. He pointed ahead. I didn't see anything at first, but then I noticed movement about 50 yards ahead. I thought it was a deer, but when I looked closer, it wasn't a deer. It was something small, moving strangely like it was skittering. Dad motioned for us to get down. We crouched behind a fallen log, and he pulled out his binoculars. He stared through them for a long time. His face changed. The expression on his face was one I'd never seen before, a mix of confusion, shock, and something else. Fear, without a word. He handed me the binoculars. Dad spends most of his time in the basement now. He set up a lock on the door. I can hear him talking to himself sometimes. His voice, low and erratic. At first, I thought maybe he was just going through something, but the way he's been acting, I'm not so sure anymore. Mom notices it too. She keeps saying, "Your father's just going through something," but she says it like she's trying to convince herself. She's worried, but I can see that she's scared to confront him. She doesn't ask about the hunting trip anymore. She knows better than to bring it up. And I think we're both trying to pretend it didn't happen, as if by ignoring it, we can somehow erase the creeping sense of dread that followed us back from those woods. I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Everything feels off. One night, I hear Dad's voice down in the basement, muffled but clear enough to make out. He's talking to someone. It sounds like two people. One of them is him, but the other voice, it's different. I can't place it, but it's cold, unnatural, like it's not human. I try to ignore it, but I can't. I lie awake, wide-eyed, listening to him whispering to whoever is down there. The weird part is, it's not even a full conversation. It's more like he's arguing with someone, but he's doing all the talking. His voice gets higher at times, then lower, like he's shifting from being himself to something else. And there's that coldness in it, that flatness. The next morning, I go down to the basement while Dad is still asleep. I don't know what I'm expecting, but I need to know what's going on. My nerves are shot, and I feel like I'm losing my mind just sitting around waiting for something, anything, to make sense of all this. The door's locked, but the key is on the counter. It's always there, like Dad knows I'll eventually do something stupid and try to see for myself. I grab the key, my hand shaking. I stand in front of the door for a long time, listening to the silence behind it. My heartbeat is deafening. I slide the key into the lock and turn it. The basement is dark, like it always is. The dim overhead light flickers a little, casting strange shadows. I can barely see anything except for Dad, sitting in front of the furnace, staring at the wall. It's like he doesn't even notice me, like he's frozen in time. "Dad," I say quietly. He doesn't respond, not at first. I walk closer to him, and that's when I see his eyes. His face is pale, and his eyes are wide, unblinking. They look different. His pupils are too small, too black. He's muttering to himself, not the usual nonsense, but something else. Something wrong. It's like he's having a conversation with someone, but there's no one else here. His lips barely move, but his voice keeps going low and erratic. "Dad!" I say again, louder this time. His head snaps around to look at me. For a split second, his eyes are the same, soft, warm, like my dad. But then they shift again. Something in them changes. They go cold, too cold, like I'm staring into the abyss. "Go back upstairs," he says, his voice flat. Too flat. It doesn't even sound like him anymore. I don't want to. I feel this overwhelming fear crawling up my spine. It's like my brain is screaming at me to run, to get away, but my legs are frozen. I don't know what's going on, but I know it's not normal. I don't even know who I'm speaking to anymore. This isn't the Dad I've known for all these years. "Dad," I whisper, taking a step back. "Go upstairs," he repeats, more forceful now. His eyes flash with something darker, something predatory, and that's when I know this isn't my dad, at least not entirely. Not anymore. I back out of the basement slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. My breath is shallow and my palms are sweating. I'm terrified, but I can't let him see it. I don't know what he's become, but I can't let him see how scared I am. I shut the door behind me and lock it, my hands shaking so much I almost dropped the key. I sit at the top of the stairs for what feels like an eternity, trying to steady my breath, trying to think straight. I don't know what's going on, but something's not right. Not just with Dad, but with everything. I hear him moving around down there. I don't know what he's doing, but I can hear things being shifted around, the muffled sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. And that voice, that low muttering, still going on. The only difference now is that it's quieter, almost like he's trying to hide it, or like he doesn't want anyone else to hear. The next few days are a blur. Mom doesn't mention Dad's behavior again. She doesn't ask questions. She's either pretending it's all okay, or she's too afraid to confront him. I can't bring myself to tell her what I saw in the basement. I'm not sure she would believe me. I'm not even sure I believe it myself. Alex hasn't called, hasn't texted. I haven't reached out either. There's this wall between us now. A wall I can't seem to break down. I want to know what happened out there. I need to know. But I also don't want to. Part of me wants to forget all of it. Pretend none of it happened. But I can't. I try to reach out to Alex, but it's like he's avoiding me. At school, he's distant. He won't look me in the eyes. When I finally corner him after class, he's tense, anxious. Dude, what happened after I ran? I ask, what happened to you? What's going on? Alex won't look at me. Nothing like your dad said. He mutters, it was just a bear. But there's something off about his voice. It's shaking. It's not just his words. It's the way he's looking at me. The fear in his eyes is too much. It's like he's terrified. Terrified of something. Terrified of me. Alex, come on. I say, we've been friends forever. You can tell me. He looks at me, finally, but it's not the way he used to. His eyes are hollow. Just drop it, okay? For your own good. Don't go digging into this. He turns and walks away, his steps slow, heavy. I watch him disappear down the hallway. He stops hanging out with me after that. He even transfers to another school. A month later, I don't hear from him. Not a text, not a call. We're both different now. I know it, and so does he. Things at home get stranger. Dad spends more time in the basement, more than ever. He sets up a lock on the door, and I can hear him talking to himself sometimes. It's like he's lost in his mind, lost to whatever it is that's come over him. Mom notices it too. She keeps saying, your father's just going through something. But she says it like she's trying to convince herself. But I know the truth now. Whatever happened in those woods, whatever we saw, it's not over. And I'm not sure I want to find out what comes next. But part of me knows I have no choice. I finish college, get a job, and try to live a normal life. But despite everything, the nightmares never stop. They haunt me every night, creeping into my thoughts when I least expect them. I dream about the woods, about Dad's wrong eyes, about the small pale figures moving silently between the trees. And sometimes in the dead of night, I swear I hear scratching at the walls, just like the noises from the basement. But when I wake up, I'm alone, far away from that cursed house. Still, no matter how far I run, I can't escape what I saw. The memories of that trip, the things Dad became, the twisted way everything ended, keep coming back. I can still feel that cold, suffocating fear from that night in the woods, the way everything felt wrong, the way my dad's eyes never looked the same again. And sometimes when I'm walking alone, I catch myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see those small, pale figures watching me from a distance. But what were they? Those creatures we saw in the woods. Those things that turned to watch us, the ones who followed us back to the cabin. What were they? I never got an answer. I thought maybe they were just figments of our imagination, a product of fear and the unknown. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like they were real, that something followed us back. I don't know if it was a forest or something inside Dad that changed him, something that grew in that basement, or if it was something older, something darker. But I know what I saw. I can still hear Dad's voice, flat and emotionless, telling me not to push it. But I can't forget the little ones, the footprints, the too many toes. I can't unsee it. And now, when I close my eyes, it's not just the woods I dream of. It's Dad, his strange voice, his hollow eyes. I keep wondering if he became one of them. Those things with too many toes, with the wrong eyes. I thought moving away would fix everything, that I could start fresh and leave it all behind. But the truth is, I don't know if you can ever really escape something like that. Some things, once seen, can't be forgotten. Maybe that's the real horror. The thought that somewhere, something is still out there, watching, waiting, and those small, pale figures with too many toes might just be waiting for me, too. The light stopped flickering, and everything went still. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise had been. Neither of us said anything for a long time, just sat there in the dark, watching the empty yard, straining to hear any sound that might explain what was happening. But there was nothing. No rustling in the trees, no wind, just a heavy stillness, like the world had paused. Eric broke the silence first. "Do you think we should go check on Buster?" I shook my head quickly. "No, let's just wait. It's probably nothing." We tried to go back to our stories, but the unease kept creeping back. The noises from earlier in the creek, the dog barking and then going silent, something about it didn't feel right. I could feel my heart rate picking up, my palms beginning to sweat. But I forced myself to breathe normally. Then, out of nowhere, the ladder started shaking. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the shaking grew more violent, and I could hear faint, scraping sounds coming from the bottom of the treehouse. I grabbed Eric's arm. "Did you feel that?" He nodded, his face pale. "What the hell is that?" The shaking stopped as suddenly as it started, but the scraping continued, slowly circling around the base of the treehouse like something or someone was walking around it. I could almost hear the slow, deliberate footsteps crunching on the dried leaves and twigs beneath. The air felt thicker, colder. I want to call out to my parents, but my voice wouldn't come. The only sound was a rhythmic, low thumping of my own heart in my ears. And then a whisper, almost imperceptible, but it was there. "Come down." The word sent a shiver down my spine, freezing me in place. I stared at Eric, his eyes wide with fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I wanted to tell him to say something, to scream, but I couldn't find my voice either. The whisper came again, clearer this time, and closer. "Come down. It's safe now." I gripped the edge of the treehouse, trying to stay calm, but all I wanted was to run. I looked around frantically for anything to explain what was happening, but the backyard was still too still. The trees stood silent like watchers, unmoving, unblinking. Suddenly, a soft, wet sound reached my ears, like something dragging through the mud. It was coming from directly beneath us now. I dare not look. Every inch of my body screamed to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. Then, the scraping returned, louder now, almost frantic, followed by a series of sharp, clawing sounds at the base of the tree. And then a breath, a long, drawn-out inhale right below us. Eric finally found his voice. "We need to get out of here. Now." We scrambled to grab our things, but the ladder was no longer a safe escape. It was swaying, shaking violently as if something or someone was trying to climb up. My mind raced. We need to hide. We ducked down behind the plywood walls, holding our breath. The sound of scraping grew louder. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. Whatever it was close. Too close. Eric's breathing was shallow, frantic, like he was trying to stay as quiet as possible. The sound outside stopped for a moment, and in the silence, I thought I heard something faint, almost like a whisper, but this time it was different. "Come down. You belong with us." A cold chill ran through my body. What the hell was that thing? Before I could react, the sound of the ladder scraping against a tree broke the silence again, but this time it wasn't a slow, cautious movement. It was fast, almost desperate. The creature, whatever it was climbing up, closer, closer. Each step felt like it was shaking the treehouse more than the last. Then, As suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The scratching, the whispering, the sounds of movement, all of it gone. I don't know how long we stayed there, but eventually we gathered enough courage to peek outside. The yard was still, no movement, no sound. We waited until dawn, too terrified to leave the treehouse, too afraid to even speak. When the sun finally rose, we climbed down in silence, checking the yard for any sign of what had happened the night before. But there was nothing, just an empty, silent backyard. I never saw Eric again after that night. He stopped coming over, stopped answering my calls, and eventually I heard his family moved away. I don't know what happened to him, but I've never been able to shake the feeling that he knew something I didn't. As for the treehouse, I never went back, the product of overactive imaginations. But another part of me knows that what we saw wasn't just a trick of the moonlight or some freak accident. Those creatures, whatever they were real. Years passed, but I never forgot the sight of that figure, his long limbs moving unnaturally, climbing the tree like it was nothing. I never went back to that spot again, and I never went near the remnants of the treehouse, even after it was gone. Something about that place, about what we saw, stayed with me, lingering in the back of my mind, even as I grew older. Then, a few months ago, I came across a strange article. It was an obscure piece about unexplained sightings in rural Ontario, near a small town called Peterborough. Among the reports was an eerie mention of creatures with long limbs and distorted proportions, similar to what we had encountered. The article mentioned that they had been sighted in nearby forests with deep, dark corners that humans rarely ventured into. The more I read, the more my heart sank. The descriptions were too similar, the details too close to what Eric and I had witnessed that summer. It was as though the things we saw were not isolated incidents. I reached out to Eric, unsure what I expected. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to know what he thought of all this. To my surprise, he responded. We agreed to meet up. When we sat down at a small cafe, I could tell he had changed. He wasn't the carefree kid I remembered, always ready for an adventure. He looked tired, almost haunted. You remember the treehouse, right? I asked, trying to ease into the conversation. Eric's face went pale. Yeah, he replied softly. I remember. You ever think about what we saw? I asked, nervously watching his reaction. He sighed, rubbing his hands together. I try not to, but I can't forget it, either. I've seen things, heard things, over the years, that made me wonder if it was real. I don't talk about it much, but I know what we saw wasn't just some animal. It wasn't just our imaginations. I nodded slowly. I found something recently. A story about creatures like what we saw. They're not just in Peterborough. They've been spotted in a few places. People are still seeing them. Eric looked up, his eyes wide. What do you mean? Are they still around? I don't know, but I don't think they ever really left. We both fell silent. It was as if we were back in that treehouse, both of us too scared to move or speak, watching the dark corners of the woods. The truth of the matter is, I don't know what those creatures were. I don't know if they were some sort of ancient entity or just something that didn't belong in our world. But I do know this. There's a reason that the indigenous people consider that forest taboo. There's something in those woods, something that doesn't want to be found. As we finished our coffee and said our goodbyes, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. I could still hear the clicking in the back of my mind, the same low, eerie sound that had haunted me all those years ago. And I knew, somewhere deep down, that one day it would find its way back to us. Why I hate dogs. Clicking on the hardwood floor, fast and urgent. My heart pounded as I reached my door, nearly slamming it shut behind me. I heard his claws scrape against the wood, a soft but unmistakable sound as he stopped just outside my door. I didn't dare open it. I lay in bed, frozen, unable to move or sleep, just listening. The air in the room felt thick with tension. He was out there waiting. I don't know how long it was before the clicking stopped. Eventually, I drifted off into a fitful sleep, my body tense the entire night. The next morning, I didn't mention the incident to anyone. I couldn't. No one would believe me. Jasper was still the beloved dog, the perfect companion. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something fundamentally wrong with him, something dark. As the years passed, the strange behavior only worsened. Whenever I was near Jasper, I felt his cold eyes following me, watching my every move. My grandparents continued to fawn over him, oblivious to what I knew in my gut. There was something dangerous lurking beneath that perfect exterior. He wasn't just a dog. He was something else, something more. I tried avoiding him as much as I could, but it was impossible. The house was small, and he was always there, lurking in the background. There were more incidents, little things that most people would overlook, but I couldn't. The way he'd stare at me, the way he would make eye contact like he knew exactly what I was thinking, what I was doing. The final straw came when I was 14. I had been helping my grandparents clean out the attic, and as I descended the stairs, I saw Jasper waiting at the bottom, his eyes locked with mine, and for the first time I saw it, a deep, unsettling understanding, like he was waiting for something from me. His body was tense, every muscle coiled, ready to pounce. I walked past him, not daring to acknowledge the growing unease in my chest, but as I passed, I felt his breath on the back of my neck. It was almost a whisper, soft and chilling. "You can't escape me." That was it. I couldn't stand it anymore. I finally told my parents, but they dismissed my fears, as expected. "Jasper's just a dog," they said. "You've imagined too much." But I couldn't shake the feeling that Jasper had been watching me, controlling me all these years. The next weekend, I begged my parents to let me stay at a friend's house. I needed a break, and they agreed. When I came back the following week, my grandparents told me something that chilled me to the bone. Jasper had disappeared. No one knew where he went or how, but my grandfather's face said everything. He looked pale, almost sick, and my grandmother was frantic, searching the house for him. But it was as if he had just vanished. I didn't feel relief, though. In fact, I felt something else entirely, like a weight had been lifted, but a new, far worse kind of fear was settling in. Jasper wasn't gone. He had just moved on, and wherever he wasn't done with me yet. And that's why, to this day, I hate dogs. Because Jasper was not just a dog. He was something else, something dark, and I will never forget the way he made me feel. Only described as a twisted, mocking grin. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to scream. The clicking of his claws on the hardwood echoed in the silence. But this time it wasn't a sound of the past. It was real, right there in my room. I could feel his presence, overwhelming and suffocating. He was no longer just a taxidermied figure. He was alive, or at least he had the semblance of life, twisted and distorted. He took a slow step forward, his movements jerky and unnatural. His tail didn't wag like it used to, but his posture was still eerily regal, as though he thought himself as the king of the house. "Jasper?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. It felt like saying his name would make it real, and I didn't want to face the reality of what was happening. But there was no denying it. He was here. Suddenly, his head tilted to one side, and his lips pulled back further into that sickening grin. My heart raced, my breath shallow. I couldn't move, couldn't think. All I could do was stare back at those cold eyes that seemed to see into my very soul, that calculating, malicious intelligence behind them. Then, without warning, he lunged. I barely had time to react, stumbling backward and crashing into the doorframe. His claws scraped against the floor, the sound a brutal reminder of just how real this was. I ran, not caring about the noise I made, barreling down the stairs and into the living room. My heart was pounding in my chest, my mind screaming at me to get out of that house, to leave this nightmare behind. But when I reached the bottom of the stairs, I froze. The door to the den was wide open, and there, standing in the doorway, was Jasper, his glass eyes glowing eerily in the dark. The terror was too much. I stumbled back, tripping over the edge of the rug, landing hard on the floor. I had to get out. I had to leave. I couldn't stay in that house another second. I ran out into the cold spring night, barefoot, not caring about the chill in the air or the branches scraping at my arms. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest neighbor's house. I knocked frantically on their door, nearly hysterical, begging to stay until my parents could come pick me up. My grandparents called me the next morning, but I couldn't explain what had happened. How could I? They wouldn't believe me, not with how they had always dismissed my fears. They would think I was just imagining things, or that I had gotten too scared of a simple dog. I never went back to that house again. I heard from my parents that my grandparents moved soon after. They couldn't afford the house anymore, or maybe it was something else. Maybe it was the memories, the strange events that lingered in the air like a dark shadow. I never asked. I didn't want to know. All I knew was that Jasper wasn't gone. He would never be gone. And I would never feel safe again as long as I remembered the cold, calculating eyes of that dog, alive in ways no dog should be. Jasper had found a way to stay, and I was certain that wherever my grandparents went, he would follow. I can't explain it, but I know one thing for sure. Some things, some spirits, don't leave us. They stay, haunting us, waiting for the right moment to remind us that they're still watching. We weren't alone in the building. It was Devil's Night in 2011. I was hanging out with my boyfriend at the time and his friend. I'll call them A and B. We were driving around trying to figure out what to do for the night. And with it being a creepy night, ghost hunting was definitely top priority. But we weren't sure where we'd end up. B said, "Why don't we go to the old tuberculosis hospital in the next town?" I had never been there, but old abandoned hospitals where all this hurting and death occurred really had my interest. So we drove the short distance to the hospital. Truth be told, this was not totally legal. So we parked down the street at the local bar and made our way to the hospital on foot. Upon walking onto the property, I instantly got an uneasy feeling. Then I saw it, this monstrous Gothic-style hospital. We made our way to the back of the building, looking for a way in. We found a loose panel with covering a window on the ground floor. I went in first, then I entered. Remember how I said I had an uneasy feeling? Well, it was about to start turning into signs that we should not be there. As B was climbing through the window, he somehow twisted his knee and could barely walk after getting into the building. As I was talking to B, trying to figure out if we should even continue, even though we just got there, I started to look around the room we were in. It looked like some kind of waiting room area, but much bigger. There were chairs stacked up along the walls and a random wheelchair sitting in the middle of the room. B agreed that he was okay to go on. He didn't want to ruin the night. We slowly made our way deeper into the hospital. I led and I followed behind him, trying to stay close since we only had 2 flashlights, and B was following behind us, going at his own pace. We came across a long hallway with doors all open. There were piles of burned patient files, looking like they were trying to hide things that went on in there. As we walked along, the guys told me that this place, after being a TB hospital, was turned into a state mental hospital. We all know how people were treated back then. Not very well. I walked into a room that still had patient files that weren't burned yet. I rummaged through some files. Some of the worst cases were there by some of the files I'd read. So we continued down this long, creepy corridor. I was shining my flashlight into the rooms as we walked down the hallway. Everything was there, everything. Like someone came in, told everyone to get out, and they all left and tried to burn the evidence. Not doing a very good job of it. I saw a room with tubs, I'm guessing ice bath therapy, and also a machine that looked like an electroshock therapy device. At the end of the long T-shaped hallway, you could go left to the cafeteria or right to the elevators and stairs. Me being a stupid teenager, seeing a chalkboard, I wrote my name on it. After doing so, I turned around to look to see where the guys were. I started to walk closer to the elevators, which had doors open, and the elevators at the bottom of the shaft. As I walked past the open elevator doors, I noticed that the exit sign and the emergency lights had turned on. Now, that should not be possible. There was absolutely no power left to the building. None. As I turned around to ask the guys if those lights should be on, all of a sudden, the entire side of the building lit up. We hurried to hide, knowing darn well it was probably the cops. Our hiding was fast, so not too much time to find room or whatever. I hid to my left by a bunch of tables, B to the right of me, and me right in front of the open elevator doors. Slowly, the lights from outside began to move around the building. We sat there for a good 20 to 30 minutes while the lights continually circled the building. As we were hiding, we began to hear noises coming from deeper inside the hospital. Faint creaking, like doors opening and closing, and footsteps echoing down the dark hallways. At first, we all tried to rationalize it, assuming it was just the building settling or wind, but after a while, it felt way too deliberate. We weren't alone, a motion for us to stay quiet. His face was pale under the dim light, his eyes wide with alarm. We all froze, straining our ears to catch any more sounds. The footsteps were getting closer. The unmistakable tap-tap of shoes against the concrete floor echoed down the hall. No way this was just an old building making noise. We all exchanged uneasy glances, our hearts racing. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered, casting strange shadows along the walls. A and B both tensed up. I could feel a coldness in the air, like the temperature had dropped several degrees in an instant. It was as if the building itself was alive, breathing in sync with us. Just as I was about to whisper, asking if we should make a run for it, the silence was shattered by a loud crash. A metal door somewhere deeper in the building slammed shut, followed by what sounded like a heavy object dragging across the floor. I could feel my pulse thumping in my ears. This was no longer an abandoned hospital. Something, or someone was in there with us. Get to the back, A whispered, pulling me by the arm, his voice barely audible. Now, we slowly crept toward the back of the building, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The sound of dragging metal followed us, getting closer with each step. My heart hammered in my chest. Every breath I took feeling like it was too loud. We turned a corner, and a motion for us to stop. He was breathing heavily, but his eyes were darting around, scanning every inch of the hallway ahead. There, at the far end, a figure stood in the doorway, just watching us. It was tall, too tall for any normal person, with arms that hung unnaturally long at its sides. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could feel its gaze on us, cold and calculating. We didn't even need to say anything. We all turned and bolted for the back exit, not caring if we made noise anymore. We didn't look back until we were outside, breathing heavily in the cold night air. The hospital behind us loomed in the darkness, silent and still. But I knew, deep down, we weren't alone in that building. Something else was there, and it was waiting for us. I request you to please like my video and subscribe my channel, and give your remarks in comment section. It will motivate me to give you best true stories.